In our last lecture, we looked at humanitarianism. In this lecture, we turn our attention to the environment. In light of the global nature of environmental damage, NGOs have stepped up as transnational actors that address the interconnected issues of the environment. An environmental NGO, or an ENGO, deals with issues pertaining to the environment that may include looking at natural resources, global warming, and conservation. ENGOs tend to focus on a wide range of issues and rely on a variety of means to accomplish their goals. The work of ENGOs may include acquiring and managing endangered land, performing field research, lobbying government institutions, and creating information campaigns to raise public awareness. Other ENGOs may serve as watchdogs to hold governments accountable to their past agreements. ENGOs may work closely with governments and corporations to create environmentally friendly policy, or they may perform a more drastic direct action. Many ENGOs are also involved with the work in development and human rights. Global Witness is a great example of this. It's an example of an international ENGO that works to prevent resource-related conflict and the associated human rights and environmental abuses. When we do look at the key players in the ENGO space globally, Greenpeace and the World Wildlife Fund are the two most prominent. Greenpeace has over 3 million members worldwide and is often credited with bringing major environmental issues to the public's attention. It was created in 1971 by a team of activists, and it focuses on worldwide issues including global warming, deforestation, and the removal of nuclear weapons. The World Wildlife Fund, also known as the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, has more than 1 million members internationally, and it's the world's largest conservation organization. It promotes biodiversity and sustainability in its operations, while working to limit pollution and consumption of natural resources. The WWF also performs policy advocacy work, on-the-ground conservation efforts, and works to make the industry more sustainable. Environmental non-governmental organizations are increasingly favoring cooperation over traditional protest and confrontation to encourage environmentally sensitive cooperative practice. Likewise, corporate firms are experiencing heightened social, legal, and global market pressures to operate more sustainably. In fact, we can see this when it comes to ESG investment. Many corporations are recognizing that a cooperative a model with environmental NGOs can be very fruitful. ENGOs can be allies for launching credible environmental initiatives through green alliances. Green alliances are defined as collaborative partnerships between ENGOs and businesses that pursue mutually beneficial ecological goals. Green alliances seek the common ground among ecological, social, and commercial interests. That is, it's encouraging environmental innovations and entrepreneurship, and through technological approaches, it seeks to address environmental problems that simultaneously accommodate or capitalize on other societal entities' needs and meet corporate economic objectives. Environmental outcomes can lead to operational efficiencies through resource reductions and competitive advantages through green technologies and products. While not all environmental initiatives lead to competitive gains, a confluence of ecological, social, and market objectives is possible from green alliances since they facilitate opportunities for stakeholders. Here, we're defining this stakeholders as any group or individual who can affect or is affected by an organization to specify problems, discuss needs, establish common ground, and implement environmental programs that address the multiple needs of affected parties. Environmental NGOs can assist corporate environpreneurial initiatives in two ways. First, ENGOs can provide corporations with ecological, scientific, and legal expertise. Secondly, ENGOs can leverage and broker corporate linkages with other diverse stakeholders whose support may be necessary to sustain the firm's environpreneurial activities. The ability to negotiate and build such social networks is called strategic bridging, where one party links diverse constituencies to address some problem domain. Drawing from its social credibility, established relationships, and other resources, an NGO can produce corporate support from other stakeholders, such as the consumer or the media, who have traditionally been skeptical, critical, or ambivalent towards businesses and their environmental efforts. While much of the emerging literature on environmental NGO and business collaboration has emphasized advantages, such partnerships are fraught with paradoxes and complexities that cause the relationships to be unstable and strategically precarious. For example, close corporate ties can threaten public trust of the environmental NGO social advocacy role. Further, green alliances can bring corporate environmental programs into the public spotlight for intensive stakeholder scrutiny and criticism. Thus, green alliances and strategic bridging offer advantages to both partners while simultaneously placing both in strategic risk. What are the conditions that are necessary for a bridger to negotiate a network of stakeholders with enduring linkages to sustain environmental initiatives? As we've hinted, strategic bridging is defined as being characterized by the presence of a third party as a stakeholder. This is separate and distinct in terms of resources and personnel from the island organizations it serves to link. Unlike mediators, bridgers enter collaborative negotiations to further their own ends, as well as to serve as links among domain stakeholders. A strategic bridger cultivates a vision towards solving problems in contexts characterized by high stakeholder interdependence and turbulence, and identifies bridging opportunities that may advance that vision. Strategic bridging provides a viable environmental solution when diverse stakeholders are unable to negotiate or cooperate freely due to mistrust, tradition, logistical problems, or when there's a need for a third party to restore a balance of power, resources, and expertise. In green alliances, the firm's environmental initiatives are part of the NGO's agenda for addressing some environmental problem. The NGO will exercise its social credibility and advocacy influence to span and link the network of relevant stakeholders to support its corporate partners' initiatives. Since strategic bridgers retain their independence, they can negotiate bilaterally with a diverse range of stakeholders. This freedom allows them the flexibility and opportunity to develop familiarity that may eventually break down social and institutional barriers that typically separate diverse stakeholders, especially in environmental problem domains. As a central actor among diverse constituencies, the bridging organization potentially has great influence over events. It can be a conduit for ideas and innovations, a source of information, a broker of resources, a negotiator of deals, a conceptualizer of strategies, a mediator of conflicts. An environmental NGO with established influential relationships with other social entities, such as government or scientific institutions, the media, and consumers, may wield extraordinary leverage to advance the alliances on for entrepreneurial and environmental initiatives. In other words, there's a network champion who is an action learning network. This is an organization that is embedded within a broader network of internal and external stakeholders with whom the organization interacts and obtains knowledge to shape organizational, social, and technological responses to environmental sustainability issues. A network champion catalyzes organizational learning by brokering stakeholder relationships, providing guidance, and accessing resources from stakeholders within the network. While a strategic bridger performs similar tasks in a green alliance, it promotes a specific environmental agenda, negotiating and exerting influence to cultivate shared values, norms of interactions, and mapping of the problem domain to produce stakeholder support. Despite its potential ability to affect change, however, A strategic bridger faces significant challenges and risks. It is first highly visible and vulnerable to constituents and other social entities holding potentially conflicting interests in the problem domain. For an organization to adopt a bridging role, its members and constituents must be aware of the diverse political, social, and economic interests of the varied stakeholders that the organization may be attempting to bridge. Flexibility and tolerance for compromise may be necessary, but difficult to achieve among internal constituents. Further, a strategic bridger must recognize and cope with external social and political stakeholders who may challenge its agenda. Lastly, a bridger needs to sustain support from its internal and external stakeholders long enough to accomplish its objectives. Failure to accomplish these tasks can seriously weaken an organization's strategic capacity and, even more importantly, its reputation. A great example of this is looking at the failed green alliance between Pollution Probe and the grocery retailer Loblaws. Pollution Probe attempted to act as a strategic bridger to consumers by endorsing Loblaws' private label green product line. The partnership failed largely because of a public challenge of the endorsement by Greenpeace and internal conflict among Pollution Probe's own staff regarding the legitimacy of the corporate relationship. Pollution Probe could neither defend its agenda from Greenpeace's threat nor build back home support amongst its staff, which resulted in negative publicity and consumer skepticism. In essence, in this example, we see that Pollution Probe failed to bridge the retailer to the relevant environmental constituents. One of the classic examples looking at the relationship and strategic alliances between environmental NGOs and businesses is the Greenpeace and Foron alliance one. Greenpeace Germany in the 1990s championed green-free refrigeration technology, an environmentally friendly hydrocarbon, as a substitute for Freon, which was a leading CFC damaging to the ozone. Greenpeace convinced Foron that incorporation of green freeze technology into their appliances would give Foron a market advantage and advance Greenpeace's goal to eliminate the use of CFCs and HFCs. In fact, Greenpeace's grassroots publicity and product endorsements generated over 70,000 orders within the first 3 months of the campaign. By the mid-1990s, all German refrigerator manufacturers had either switched to green freeze technology or were planning to convert, thus fulfilling Greenpeace's goal of eliminating refrigerated CFCs and HFCs. Greenpeace took a further step. It promoted the hydrocarbon technology in China, in India, and other developing nations, literally giving it to willing entrepreneurs, convinced that if readily available, green freeze would be adopted widely in the developing world before other environmentally damaging technologies became established. For Foron, however, the Germany's sort of industrial adoption of green freeze meant it was no longer the exclusive marketer of eco-responsible refrigerators. Despite some modest energy efficiency innovations, Foron lost market share as the more sophisticated rival hydrocarbon refrigerators appeared on the market. In fact, Greenpeace abandoned the company to concentrate on its global green freeze campaign, and Foron lacked the financial resources and marketing know-how to establish itself independently. At the end of the day, Foron declared bankruptcy. What the Greenpeace and Foron alliance case illustrates is a number of important bridging outcomes, including how Greenpeace assisted the ailing Foron technologically. Greenpeace defended Foron from governmental and competitive threats. It marketed Foron's clean coolers, and it assembled a coalition of supportive stakeholders to coerce industry adoption of green freeze. Ultimately, though, Greenpeace did abandon Foron. At the end of the day, we need to understand the vision of Greenpeace in this case study. Greenpeace Germany adopted Montreal's Protocol's directive, setting a vision to eliminate CFCs and HFCs from the German refrigeration industry. When Germany's dominant appliance manufacturers refused to consider the proposed alternative technology, Greenpeace focused on Foron to make entrepreneurial inroads to demonstrate Greenpeace's viability and build a coalition of stakeholder supporters. For the first time, Greenpeace attained its goals through technological discussion. The case suggests that strategic bridging may be more emergent than deliberative processes, since a bridger may need to alter the problem domain's initial circumstances and stakeholder relationships to build leverage over resistant or threatening social entities. How this change is enacted, however, may not be readily apparent, requiring the bridger to be persistent and entrepreneurial in seizing bridging opportunities to establish support. In retrospect, Greenpeace's plan for replacing CFCs and HFCs with a feasible alternative technology gave the NGO greater credibility amongst stakeholders than it had engaged in protest alone. This concludes our lecture on the environment, and in fact, it concludes our lecture series on NGO governance and management.